Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to wait about 10 or 15 seconds as people get settled in from the waiting room. Thank you for joining us at this early hour, and for our friends abroad, thank you for joining this evening.
Okay.
Okay, great. To keep us on schedule, I will go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third session of the Southeast Asia in Focus series hosted by the US-Asia Institute. My name is Zev Moses, and I'm the Director of International and Government Affairs here at the US-Asia Institute. USAI is a nonpartisan United Nations affiliated nonprofit with a 41-year track record of building understanding and strengthening ties between the people and governments of the United States and Asia. I just want to get started with a couple housekeeping notes. To record your attendance for this briefing, please email USAI at usasiainstitute.org, or you can directly chat me with your name and email. After the event, we'll be sending out some additional materials and backgrounders, which could be helpful to provide some context to today's talk. Further, there's going to be time for questions from the audience after presentations today. So if you have a question you would like our speakers to address, please type it in the chat function at any time. I'd like to give a special thanks for the support of USAI's corporate stakeholders for helping make this program possible. That's Las Vegas Sands, Merck, Fairfield Maxwell, AIG, Airbnb, and especially ConocoPhillips today. This initiative is a series of standalone briefings that will examine key issues in the US relationship with specific Southeast Asian nations. We hosted 2 broader sessions this past fall. They'll continue throughout this year, and we'll aim to focus on trade, security, maritime issues, technology, human rights, and more. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Kim Yeager. Kim is the Senior Director of Maritime Southeast Asia at the US ASEAN Business Council. In this role, she's led and developed numerous forums, the Indonesia ICT Consultative Forum, the Council's Human Capital Forum in Singapore. She's reinstated business missions to Laos, led the Council's largest mission to Malaysia. She's also served as a delegate to the ASEAN Young Leaders Summit, and spent several years working in the nonprofit sector before her time at the Business Council. We're very happy to have her and her expertise with us today. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Kim.
Thanks so much, Zev. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third session of the Southeast Asia in Focus series hosted by the US-Asia Institute. Southeast Asia has continued to grow in economic, strategic, and political importance over the years. While the United States has fostered strong partnerships with many diverse stakeholders in the region, the past few years, we didn't see as much time and attention put into relationships with Southeast Asia, leaving the US seat vacant at the table in many discussions. With the new administration, one that is focused on building bilateral and multilateral relationships around the world, while also focusing heavily on climate change, today's discussion on energy in Indonesia, one of the largest countries in the world, is very timely. Today's briefing will kick off an exploration of the energy sectors of Southeast Asia, and we will specifically examine Indonesia's energy priorities, including meeting the nation's growing energy demands, expanding access to affordable, reliable energy, and attracting investment into the sector, including in green energy technology. Indonesia is a resource-rich nation. It is Southeast Asia's biggest gas supplier, the world's 4th largest producer of coal and largest producer of biofuels. Still, with its growing population, transportation, and industrial sectors, Indonesia's energy demand is rising, and Indonesia's imports of oil have rapidly increased in recent years. However, Indonesia continues to look to innovative and sustainable energy solutions, with renewable energy growing to about 12% of Indonesia's energy consumption and a new target set for 23% by 2025. Today, we will also focus on the important role of the United States in the development of Indonesia's energy sector. The US is already playing a key role, but there are significant opportunities for further growth and cooperation, and we're looking forward to diving into those topics this morning. We are fortunate to have top experts and business leaders to provide their perspectives on these key issues. Today's speakers will each give remarks, then we'll engage in a brief discussion before taking as many of your questions as time allows. First, I'd like to welcome Dr. Kutubi. Dr. Kutubi is the director of the Center for Petroleum and Energy Economic Studies in Indonesia. He served as a member of Indonesia's parliament from 2014 to 2019, where he served as the chairman of the Nuclear Caucus and vice chairman of the National Democratic Faction. He also spent time in the business community, including at Pertamina, Indonesia's largest state-owned oil and gas company, and in the academic community as a lecturer in energy economics at the University of Indonesia. Dr. Kutubi's vast political, business, and academic experience have given him in-depth knowledge of Indonesia's oil and gas industry, green energy efforts, nuclear energy sector, and regulatory environment. We are excited to have him and his expertise with us today. Now, Dr. Kutubi, I'll turn it over to you for remarks.
Thank you very much. Once again, thank you for having me to speak in this important webinar. We will focus on Indonesian energy policy, the opportunity in Indonesian energy resource development. First of all, I would like to speak a little bit about energy economic indicators. Indonesia is the biggest country in Southeast Asia in terms of population and in terms of the size of economic activity as reflected by gross national income. Based on World Bank data, in 2019, our gross national income has reached more than $1 billion US. It means that Indonesia is number 16 in terms of the size of the economy. Our population is around 270 million. But in terms of per capita, is quite low. Income per capita, for example, we have income per capita around $4,000, $4,050, exactly number. The same as, because we talk about energy, the electricity consumption per capita, also among the lowest in Southeast Asia. What does it mean? There is a big problem how Indonesia manage its energy resources. Actually, this country is very rich in energy resources. All kinds of energy resources we have here in Indonesia. We have renewable and non-renewable energy. We have clean energy and not clean energy. We have intermittent energy and non-intermittent energy sources in Indonesia. But it seems to me that our energy resources not yet managed very well. How come this country with huge resource of coal, huge resource of oil, huge resource of any kind of energy in Indonesia? Coal. Now we are one of the biggest coal exporter into it. 3/4 of our coal production is exported. In 1970s, 1980s, this country is the biggest oil producer in Asia. Our production at the time for crude oil reached 1.7, 1.6 million barrels a day, around 25 years ago. Around 20 years ago, our crude oil production around more than 1.4 million barrels per day. We have a kind of oil boom at the time. Our economic growth is quite high, around 7%. But since early 20th century, year 2000, 2001, our crude oil production dropped during 2 decades. Our crude oil production dropped from 1.4 to this day only 700,000 barrels a day. Okay. This bad history. In other side of the story of energy consumption in Indonesia, also there is something that the government did not so good things in terms of how they make energy policy for Indonesia. For, let's say, last 10 years. How come Indonesian economic growth during 10 years only grows by around 5%? Growth 4%, 4.5%, 5%, 6%, never again growth at 7% per year, like in the oil boom era. This is the bad, I would say, the bad story about economic in Indonesia. During I was in Parliament, many things has done not properly. Okay. For example, in terms of developing the new and renewable energy or the green energy. Okay, during last 10 years, for example, the growth of energy, green energy, clean energy for Indonesia, both from supply side, is very, very small. The new and renewable energy in Indonesia, I would say, is not so good the government have handled. For example, the prerequisite for the government to agree to build the new and renewable energy based for electric power plant mostly depend on the cost of coal-based power plant. The coal-based power plant is wrongly calculated its cost. Why I said like that? Because as we know, coal power plant is the most power plant that produce so large amount of carbon emission, so large amount of pollutant, NOx, SOx. But during many decades ago, this country depend heavily on building the coal-based power plant. For example, to be agreed that someone would like to build solar power plant, wind-based power plant, they must fulfill the prerequisite that the cost of producing electricity from renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, geothermal, hydro, and so on, okay, must a little bit higher from cost standard which come from the coal power plant. For example, many years they use the standard of around 7 cents per kilowatt hour for the Java Island, Sumatra Island, where the most of the power plant come from coal. Okay, the cost standard is very low, quote unquote, very low. Why quote unquote? Because the externality cost of coal power plant, they never consider. They don't internalize the externality cost of coal power plant, such that it seems that the standard cost for someone who want to invest in new and renewable energy in Indonesia is very, very hard. The whole country divided, become 20 or something region that has different cost of producing electricity. Outside Java Island and Sumatra Island, they must meet 85% of the producing electricity at certain region. While we know that cost of producing electricity from solar, from wind, from geothermal, much higher compared to the cost producing electricity from coal. At the time, the government used the standard around 7 cents per kilowatt hour, producing cost of solar, wind energy, geothermal energy around 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, this is the reason why the percentage of the role of green energy, new and renewable energy in Indonesia is very, very low. In 2017, only 5 or 6%. But according to national energy policy, the target of green energy in 2050 in terms of percentage of energy mix actually quite high. Yeah, around 30% something. You can imagine the role of green energy in 1970s around 5%, maybe now around 9% in 2019, around 9%. How can this country to reach 30% of energy mix will come from renewable green energy? It is impossible. That's why I hope that the government and our parliament in Indonesia will agree with renewable and non-renewable, new and renewable energy bill that will become umbrella for developing green energy in Indonesia. Without having strong umbrella, it is impossible to reach 30% of the whole energy consumed in 2050 will come from clean energy. I don't know how will be implemented if nuclear power will not include to our electricity system. If only depend on the development of renewable intermittent energy sources, I would say impossible to reach the percentage of around 30% in year 2050. Why? Indonesia is our climate here, maybe 3 months rainy season. It means solar power will not work productively. Wind power also, in some places that have already built wind power plant, their effectivity more, maybe around 30 or 40%. It means that the cost of producing electricity from intermittent sources is very expensive, unless the technology continuously be developed in order to reduce costs of producing electricity from intermittent sources. While if we include nuclear power in our energy policy in Indonesia, I'm sure that the target of around 30% in 2050 could be achieved. Why? Because the technology of energy, of nuclear energy, continuously develop from generation 1 to generation 1, something like Chernobyl, generation 2, something like Fukushima, generation 3, something like what has been done in Uni Emirat Arab. And now the latest technology is Gen 3 positive plus and Gen 4. They have found very, very efficient design, very efficient system now in nuclear power plant. Nuclear power plant based on uranium. They have a small modular reactor. Nuclear power plant based on thorium. They found the new design of molten salt reactor, for example. They come up with the cost of electricity is around 5 cents per kilowatt hour. You can imagine, 5 cents. While the standard of the government, as I said, around 7 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, if nuclear power comes with the 5 cents per kilowatt hour, if this rule is consistently applied, I'm sure that nuclear power plant will be built in Indonesia. And the target of 30% in 2050 will be achieved. And the industrialization, massive industrialization will be pushed because the electricity come from nuclear power can produce electricity 24 hours, non-stop, non-intermittent, without storage, very clean, almost zero carbon emission, almost zero pollutant and SOx. So what's the problem now? If the government do not move on.
Thank you, Dr. Kutubi. Sorry, just to give you one more minute to wrap up so we make sure you have time for the next panelists.
Okay. While the dream for nuclear power in Indonesia started in 1950s when first President Soekarno won Indonesia to have nuclear power plant to increase the country prosperity, not to make a bomb. Okay, now is the time where the whole world through Paris Agreement agree, and we are in Indonesia. When I was in Parliament, I involved in bringing the Paris Agreement to become Indonesian law. We ratified as the law number 6, 2016. And will also meet the what we call the UN program in energy toward clean and affordable energy. Clean and affordable. Clean but expensive. Not make sense in Indonesia. Affordable but dirty. In case of coal. Now, affordable and clean. It will be made by new and renewable energy sources. In our terminology, in our energy management policies, nuclear energy is categorized as a new energy in Indonesia. Okay, so we have a law bill EBT, mean new and renewable energy, which include the nuclear power. Okay, so I'm so optimistic. Investor from abroad, please come to Indonesia. Wherever you want to invest in oil and gas, it's okay. Because in 2050, the role of natural gas is still there. The role of oil is still there, but declining in percentage for oil. Yeah, that's why we also encourage American investor to come get involved in oil industry. We have huge natural gas reserve in North Natuna. Okay, this place.
Dr. Kartubi, I hate to cut you off. I know we're probably going to return to a lot of these topics in the Q&A discussion. Do you mind if we squeeze in our next panelist? Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. And again, sorry for the long time.
No problem at all. And we'll be returning to these topics, like I said, in the Q&A. So thank you so much for your excellent remarks. I'd now like to introduce His Excellency Dr. Tanri Abang. Dr. Tanri has played a key leadership role in some of Indonesia's largest state-owned companies. He's the former Minister of State-Owned Enterprise and former Chairman of Pertamina, and also is the former Chairman of PT Telkom Indonesia, the nation's largest telecommunications company. In the public sphere, Tanri served 5 Indonesian presidents over the span of 2 decades in the roles of advisor, minister, and reformer. His expertise, leadership, and business acumen ultimately created a blueprint for the development of the country's critical state-owned enterprises. Thank you for taking the time to join us today to provide your insight. With that, Bapak Tanri, I will turn it to you. Tanri, it looks like you're still on mute.
Hello?
There we go. We can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now. Okay, fine. Thanks, Kip. I will talk about the aspect of business or micro level, as Dr. Kartubi has explained them macro and the policy level. Now, for a business perspective, I'll talk about Pertamina. As a business entity, Pertamina is actually Indonesia's national oil and gas company or energy company, you say. In fact, Pertamina is the largest corporation in Indonesia with $60 billion revenue, all from domestic. Now, as a state-owned, Pertamina is mission to provide energy security for the country in terms of availability, accessibility, acceptability, affordability, and sustainability. So that's Pertamina's mission. This, of course, is very challenging mission, but Pertamina, for Pertamina, in a country of more than 12,000 islands, but Pertamina must deliver because it is a state-owned and it is mission to deliver energy security. But the question is how? What Pertamina needs is basically more investment, bring in technology, and best practice management. Development program and investment for Pertamina can be briefly outlined as follows. From the midstream and downstream, the current requirement of refined oil product is 1.6 million barrels per day. Now, 4 of Pertamina's oil refineries only produce 800,000 barrels per day. So there is a need to actually develop additional refinery with a capacity of 800,000 barrels per day. Now, this will include biofuel and green refinery. This is in line of the commitment to reduce carbon emission in Indonesia. But this new refinery must be most efficient with state-of-the-art technology. Now, there again, we talk about technology to be more competitive. In the downstream also, Pertamina will invest in petrochemical to produce 8,900 kiloton per annum from 1,900 kiloton existing. So we will actually increase more than 4 times. Now, given those plan, Pertamina will invest approximately or in excess of 40 billion until year 2027. This is just for the downstream. Now, what about the upstream? Dr. Kutrubi already explained that actually the total production of crude now in Indonesia is only 700,000 barrels per day. Imagine, we were 1.4 million during the old good old days, yeah, when Indonesia was actually the booming in oil. Now, even the 700 is still declining, whereas we do need to import more crude. But in the meantime, what Pertamina is trying to do is to increase the production or through the what they call enhanced oil recovery, EOR. This has got a certain technology and I know US has got this technology. And also there must be a new discovery through exploration. Again, we will need technology. In the upstream, Pertamina planned to invest approximately 40 billion through 2027. Now, on the new and renewable energy, Dr. Truby already explained that it will take a long time to actually achieve the 30% renewable. But Pertamina has what we call energy transition for renewable energy with 4 pillars. Number 1 is the biofuel and green refinery. Now, this is already included in the refinery master plan I mentioned for the downstream. 2, geothermal for electricity and gas instead of coal. There again is in order to reduce the carbon emission. 3, renewables such as solar, wind, hydro, coal, and also gas for the power instead of coal. Coal is actually is a problem in terms of carbon emission. Number 4 is the battery for electric vehicle. Now, Indonesia is one of the largest producer of tin, but Pertamina will be involved in the downstream, which is the production of battery for vehicle or electric vehicle. And this will require an investment of approximately $20 billion. Now, Pertamina is now a holding company after a restructuring last year. There are now 6 subholding or subsidiaries. 1 is upstream company, 2 refining and petrochemical company, 3 commercial and trading company, 4 is shipping company, 5 is power and renewable, and 6 is gas company. The reason why I explain this, because with the new structure, Pertamina will be able to invite foreign or external partner to build the requirement for security, energy security in Indonesia. Now, with this new structure, I think Pertamina will be in a position to be able to actually increase their production, increase their revenue, and at the same time actually adding or participating in a significant way in new and renewable energy. Of course, as Dr. Kurtubi explained, perhaps the nuclear energy may be the answer, but Pertamina is not in that area. Now, the bottom line from business perspective is that Pertamina will be needing approximately $100 billion through to 2027. But capital actually can be generated. What is most important is actually technology and best practice management. This is where I think US has very important role. And we know that American corporations are best in providing and actually also training local talent. Yeah, we have an example. Pertamina has a partnership with Exxon, and Exxon has been able to actually develop Indonesian talents. I'm sure ConocoPhillips is also has the same experience. So what I am trying to actually promote here is that for US and Indonesia, specifically in the energy sector, there should be an area where US can actually provide technology, human capital development, and in fact, education in general. So US should also take a note that based on PwC estimate, and the estimate is based on the IMF research, that Indonesia will be the 5th largest economy by 2030 with a GDP of 5.4 trillion. Now that I think is an interesting, particularly Indonesia at the time will have a population exceeding 300 million, which in fact is half of ASEAN. So how can US miss this kind of opportunity? So what I would like to say basically is that building business and developing people probably is the best way to keep the relationship everlasting. And this is where I think US can play, I would say, significant roles. Even in the past, even Indonesian economists were actually trained in the United States. Now, in the energy sector, I think US can play important role by providing technology, providing training our talent to be expert in this area. We don't need actually to import democracy because we have our own democracy. What we need is capital, we need technology, and we need the development of human resources. And I think US can do this, and particularly in the area of energy, Pertamina is basically the right institution to work with, because as a state-owned company, Pertamina can actually, through their 6 subsidiaries, invite foreign partners to develop energy sector in Indonesia. That's one of the reasons why Pertamina is now a holding company. This was a restructure strategy last year in order to allow for Pertamina to be flexible, to be agile, and to be able to actually develop this sector through the what I would call the entrepreneurial way, and try to reduce the bureaucratic processes. So when you combine the macro and micro aspect, I think Indonesia presents a great opportunity for US to participate. Now, of course, everybody knows that it's not easy to do business in Indonesia. You have to have the passion and you have to have the passion. And when you have these two, I think opportunity is still greatly, I would say, open, particularly for US, because I personally believe that US will be able to bring their new technology. They will be able to actually trade and develop people. And these are the two that actually will provide everlasting relationship between the two countries. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanri, for your valuable remarks. I really appreciate you flagging the significance of human capital and training a high-skilled workforce, and how U.S. companies are actively doing that. The role remains for the U.S. to continue to be active in this space. I think that's a really great segue to our third and final panelist. And I'll start by passing it over to George Kalantzakis to introduce our final speaker. George is the Manager of International Government Affairs and Political Risk for ConocoPhillips and is a valuable member of the U.S. Asia Institute's Corporate Council. George, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Kim. Really appreciate it. And I really appreciate everyone's comments this morning. Just a few remarks. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Bij Agarwal, who is ConocoPhillips President and General Manager for our business in Indonesia. Bij has a bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering from Texas A&M University, a master's in petroleum engineering from the University of New Mexico, a PhD from the Imperial College of London, and an MBA from Duke University. So I also like to just give a very quick overview of ConocoPhillips as a company. We're an American-based company headquartered in Houston, Texas, with operations in approximately 17 countries around the world. You know, I think this is such a great conversation to have about Indonesia and the important role that American companies play in the region. Our previous speaker mentioned the importance of developing people and human capital. I think that is one of the biggest, the most valuable contributions American companies like ConocoPhillips have when we do business in foreign countries. For example, ConocoPhillips's staff in Indonesia is, I believe, approximately 98 or 99% Indonesian. And we develop human capital. We invest heavily in our workforce and with training, and we like to obviously utilize technology in our operations. So with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Bij Agarwal, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to participate today. Thank you again.
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to participate in this important webinar. And I'm just going to share a few thoughts regarding some of the opportunities in Indonesia from the perspective of a US company in the oil and gas industry. So if you'll just bear with me a little bit, I'll kind of give you a little bit of background on ConocoPhillips and then what we see kind of as the opportunities going forward. So yeah, ConocoPhillips and several other US oil and gas companies have been operating in Indonesia for well over 50 years, and with a population of around 270 million currently, Indonesia is a huge potential market for energy, as we've heard from our two previous panelists. So, as you know, most of you, last year, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources through SK Gas set an aspirational target of 1 million barrels of oil per day and 12 billion cubic feet of gas per day by 2030. And although we have been seeing declining oil production in recent years, as Dr. Kurdubi outlined in his remarks, Indonesia still has tremendous resources and has the ability to reverse this trend. And again, that is the basis for the target that's been set, looking at the resource potential and the ability. Bapak Tanri mentioned the EOR, especially coming through. I mean, things like that will really help to ensure that we could try to get to this target. That's, again, right now seems aspirational, but certainly there is a pathway to achieving it. One of the issues or the challenges we have are the remaining resources are located in kind of the more challenging areas in eastern Indonesia. And so they're in deep water. There's very little infrastructure around, and they're remote from the market. So what that all means is higher cost, more expensive to explore, more expensive to develop, and certainly more expensive to commercialize. And so given the current situation, the current climate within the oil and gas industry, the oil price collapse that was fueled in 2020 by the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and then subsequently COVID-19 coming in and really decreasing the demand for oil and gas quite significantly. It really did force many of the companies, including the major players, international and national both, to substantially reduce the spend. And capital budgets shrunk, and investment is directed really only to the most competitive opportunities. And these are defined by, the fiscal terms are in place, the legal certainty, so the ability to know that what you're signing up for today is what you're going to get in the future, and then certainly the ease of doing business. So one of the reports that has recently been put out is by WoodMac, and WoodMac has shown, as we all know, that Indonesia has a high prospectivity, so it has a tremendous resource base, but its fiscal attractiveness is somewhat below average. And the fiscal attractiveness index that they use has Indonesia 2.35 compared to an average of 3.3, where the UK and some other countries have an index above 4.0. And so again, with the prospectivity in the resource, this presents an opportunity clearly to make some changes or do some things that will help attract more investment to the country. And we are pleased to see that the Indonesian government is open for dialogue on how to improve the investment climate in the upstream sector. Individual companies such as ourselves, Exxon, BP, Pertamina, others, and through the Indonesian Petroleum Association are very much active and invited for input on new or revisions to policies. Some of the actions in the forms of regulatory changes have taken place. Just as an example, in the fiscal terms area, a regulation has been recently issued, which provides an option for investors to choose between a cost recovery and a gross split PSC. This is very important because previously there was no option and you had to take gross split. But with this optionality, it gives a better investment climate for, especially foreign direct investment, where again, capital budgets are very constrained and there's a tremendous amount of competition for that limited capital to begin with. So having the option to choose is really very, very important. Some other incentives that have been granted, again, are all in the spirit of trying to improve the investment climate, deferral of the abandonment and site restoration funding, reduction or deferral of income taxes. We also are continuing to work with the ministries and look forward to further issuance of improved fiscal terms, such as an enhanced split, competitive gas pricing, permanent tax incentives, tax holidays, or assume and discharge on indirect taxes. Other areas I mentioned that we hope the government can also focus on to improve the investment climate is legal certainty, which includes contract and bilateral treaty sanctity and protection from criminalization. So for investors with long-term investment requiring major capital, legal clarity and certainty is very important. Again, a lot of our projects from exploration to being on production can take anywhere from 3 to 10 years, depending on where it's located. And so knowing that what you sign up for when you first make your investment is what you're going to get when you start seeing revenues is critically important to an investment decision. Ease of doing business, very, very important. Again, it's ensuring that the projects can progress in a timely manner. Again, I mentioned the timescale that we typically are working on for exploration to production type projects. And so, the more that timeline can be compressed, obviously that has a bigger impact on the economics and makes the project look more attractive. The longer it takes, the less attractive the project looks. So things such as permitting and just the approval process, elimination of redundant and non-value adding processes are all things that will definitely add value to the investment. And then finally, we believe that collaboration with the local stakeholders is also very important. ConocoPhillips has partnered with Pertamina from the beginning of the corridor block almost 50 years ago, and will continue for the next 20 years with the extension of the corridor block that was signed in November of 2019, and will be effective when the current PSC expires in 2023. And part of that collaboration, with the extension, we've agreed with Pertamina to transfer operatorship after a period of time, which is a different model than with the other expiring blocks, and is a result of good collaboration amongst all stakeholders, so all the partners and the government involved in that. So with the above, we believe that the investment climate will be improved and should attract greater foreign direct investment, helping to meet the targets of 1 million barrels of oil per day and 12 billion cubic feet per day of gas by 2030, and thereby increasing contribution of oil and gas to the state revenues. Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Bish. And thank you to all the panelists for providing such a thorough overview of Indonesia's energy sector and outlining some of the opportunities as well as the obstacles. I want to start our Q&A discussion with a topic that's very timely as it's impacting our ability to have this conversation, doing it virtually rather than in person, and that is the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has impacted everything from the economy to investment potential to the way we work. And I want to ask each of our panelists, what are the most significant ways Indonesia's energy sector has been impacted by the pandemic, and what recommendations do you have for recovery? So Bapak Tanri, maybe we'll start with you.
Where do you get, well, I'm not actually the operator. Maybe get our friend from ConocoPhillips first. I will add it to that.
Happy to. Bish, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, no, happy to comment on that. Obviously, the pandemic has had a huge impact on price. Yeah, as I mentioned in my remarks, price and demand kind of go hand in hand, and so it was kind of a double whammy of the price war and then the pandemic hitting that kind of drove prices to a negative oil price, which we had never seen before. So it really has had an impact on demand, and the recovery is what's very uncertain at this point. And so normally, in previous, and the oil and gas industry is very cyclic, and so we go through these ups and downs, fairly frequently. Unfortunately, the frequency seems to be, getting smaller and smaller, such that the volatility is increasing, and we're seeing these cycles more and more. But what that translates to is kind of the uncertainty on when is oil price going to rebound, and what that obviously has the impact on is, investment, because capital budgets shrunk considerably across the board. That not only impacts the operators, impacts the service companies. We always say, in the oil and gas industry, the multiplier effect is huge. So for every one direct oil and gas job, there's 100 other jobs that support it. And so obviously if investment decreases, then that's going to have an impact on, the job markets too, because there's less capital going in. So how do you fix it? I mean, obviously the vaccines are going to be helpful, getting travel up, getting oil price to recover a little bit. We're seeing it kind of stabilizing around $55 right now, Brent. I mean, that's better than where it was before, but the stability is going to be important to see investment really picking up more and more. And so I think we're going to have to wait a little bit and see what happens. I think the operators are certainly being a little bit more cautious in terms of getting back into the investment rapidly. So with that, I'll maybe turn it over to Dr. Tanri to make some comments.
Okay. Okay. Well, as far as Pertamina is concerned, we're probably luckier because we actually control the domestic market. So when the crude price goes down, our cost is lower and we can make a little bit more money. Yes, of course, due to the pandemic, our sale decreased, I think, approximately 20%. But that is offset by the lower input cost, which is the crude oil. Now, in terms of the investment in refining and petrochemical, of course, this investment is actually for import substitution. So the market is still there. And what we need to do is to make sure that the investment is cost effective and reducing the production cost. So overall, Pertamina, I think, is still in a better position than perhaps the average oil company in Indonesia. Yeah.
Great, thank you both. Dr. Kurtubi, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I would like to give some comment on how to improve investment in the upstream sector of the oil industry in Indonesia. This is the big problem. The reason why our crude oil production have been declining for so long, almost 2 decades, okay, from 1.4, 1.5 million barrels a day until only 700,000 barrels per day now. The problem is the existing system is more complicated, more bureaucratic. This system is based on the law number 22, law about migas, which gave the new system where all oil investors or all oil players in Indonesia make contract with the government, okay? B2D system between the government represented by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources and BP Migas, the representation of the government to make contract with oil investor in Indonesia. B2G system, so bureaucratic. Something much different than the system, the previous system, where the relationship between host country and the oil foreign investor follow the system of what we call B2B, business to business relationship. Okay, it is very simple system. The investment process is very, very simple. If Indonesia still use B2B, okay, all the permit that needed by the all oil contractors in Indonesia is handled by National Oil Company, by Pertamina. Okay, so investor just stay in hotel. They don't need to meet governor. They don't need to meet the minister. No, they just bring money, spend your money to do exploration, buy tool or whatever that you need for doing exploration, exploitation. One those tools arrive in Indonesia, in Tanjung Priok Harbor, for example, Pertamina take care how to get out those machine or whatever, not the investor. If the investor get trouble facing region, government, facing NGO, for example, they want to drill in certain area, some NGO oppose the previous system, Pertamina will go in front. The investor stay at hotel. Now, the investor must face all kind of barricade. Okay, this is so complicated. The system. I have told the government since 20 years ago, do not accept this system. Just stay with the very simple system, B2B. If contractor has the problem, they just say the problem to Pertamina. Pertamina will take care. Okay, that's why the investment for exploration is so high at the time. Almost every week, they find a new reserve. Every month, they got the big reserve because investment in exploration is increase. Okay, now let me tell you, since the law number 22 effective in Indonesia in 2001, the number of exploratory drilling declined sharply. Impossible to increase crude oil production in Indonesia if the exploration activity declining. You can imagine around 20 years, crude oil production go down. This makes this country becoming big deficit in oil and gas trading. The solution is very easy. I told to the DPR, to our parliament, just return back the system to the old system, to the very simple system, where Pertamina must be given of what's called the mining right of oil and gas. Now the mining right of oil and gas in the hand of the government.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Kutubi. I want to make sure we have a time for some of the audience questions as well. Sorry to keep interrupting you. So my next question from our audience, how can the US and Indonesia work together in renewable energy and decarbonization to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement? What viable clean energy solutions are being planned in Indonesia? So I'll leave that open for any of our panelists to tackle. Dr. Kutubi, did you want to take that question?
Repeat it again, your question.
Yeah, no problem. How can the US and Indonesia work together in renewable energy and decarbonization to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement? What viable clean energy solutions are being planned in Indonesia? I know we touched upon a few, but would you like to go in further?
Yes, I think if America or American company want to get involved in building and developing infrastructure of renewable or green energy in Indonesia, the possibility is huge. as I said before, we are developing solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, bioenergy at the same time now. But we have to wait until the parliament come up with a new law on new and renewable energy. Okay, all system will be simplified. I hope. Yeah, and the problem that new and renewable energy faced for the last 5 years was the cost of producing electricity using renewable energy is very high, around 12 cents per kilowatt hour, while the government used the standard 7 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm telling you. Now, if America can bring new technology on renewable energy, on green energy, I will more than welcome. The same as if America will come with nuclear power plant using thorium, which is the new technology, come with the very low price, very low cost. 5 cents per kilowatt hour nuclear power plant based on thorium. We have thorium in Indonesia, in Bangka Belitung, in Kalimantan, that we want to use it. This is the time American energy company also come to Indonesia to build nuclear power plant by using our thorium or our uranium. We have uranium, huge uranium in West Kalimantan, in Sulawesi. Okay, please come to Indonesia, and the system, the process of investment will be make simpler.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Kutubi. And Bij, I know ConocoPhillips has been really active in greener initiatives and has a strong commitment to the Paris Agreement as well. Do you have anything that you want to share that ConocoPhillips is working on in this area?
Yeah, no, thanks, Kim. Appreciate the question. We're one of only 2 U.S. oil and gas companies that have signed up for the World Bank Zero Flaring by 2030 initiative, and so we're very proud to be part of that. And also recently, people may have read in the news that we have come out with again just a handful of companies a commitment to achieve net zero emissions for scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2050, which again it's an ambitious target, but one that we see we have clear line of sight to. And so as a company, we have a very strong position on climate and environmental matters, and obviously that will translate to our business in Indonesia, because that's going to be a big component of that as we go forward. So we're continuing to look at new technologies. Innovation is going to be a key for us kind of going forward, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to try to reduce flaring and just reduce emissions in general, so that we can try to contribute to obviously the target that's been set by the company. So very active in that area. So thanks for the question.
Great, thanks so much, Bij. I noticed we're just about at time, so I want to really thank our panelists, Bij, Dr. Kutubi, Bapak Tanri, for all of the valuable knowledge and expertise that you shared. I want to highlight some of the key areas that you flagged in Indonesia's development of its energy sector, both the significance that oil and gas continue to play, as well as the opportunities and obstacles to adapting and adopting more renewable energy as well. So attracting investment, adoption of innovative technology, and training a world-class workforce. And then these are kind of some of the key areas to both meeting Indonesia's growing energy demands, as well as navigating an energy transition. So thank you all for your remarks and addressing each of our questions. I want to thank the audience, the participants, for joining today. We know you are very busy and appreciate you taking the time as well. Now I'll turn it back over to Zev for some final announcements.
Great, thank you, Kim. Greatly appreciate you stepping in to moderate today. I know that's not easy to do, one so early in the morning, but also virtually. Also a huge thank you to Tanri, Dr. Kartubi, and Bij for joining us and providing your excellent insight. It's late in the evening in Indonesia, it's early in the morning in Houston. So thank you for covering a lot. We certainly did not have enough time to dive into everything, but we hope that this is just the beginning of the conversation as the US and Indonesia work more closely together to develop this partnership. As I mentioned, we're just getting started with this Southeast Asia in Focus series, and we'll continue to be hosting more webinars throughout the year. Our next event, we're aiming to host the week of March 1st, so please stay on the lookout for an invitation to our fourth briefing in this series that will look at the US trade relationship with Southeast Asia and its diverse nations. There are many opportunities for further economic cooperation and growth in Indonesia alone. So examining trade in the broader region, I think will be really interesting. To close out, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and to thank our corporate stakeholders again, Las Vegas Sands, Merck, Fairfield Maxwell, AIG, Airbnb, and certainly ConocoPhillips. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. I wish we could hang around and chat like we could if we were in person. But thank you all for joining us. Appreciate your time.